Gentlemen, welcome back once again. It's episode 152 of your favorite podcast, which is Keeping It Rio. You already knew all of that. And today I've got myself an amazing guest. I'm very, very excited to speak to my friend here, Melanie Verstraete. Did I say that correctly?
It's Verstraete.
Verstraete. See, you literally just told me that seconds earlier. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what's called being kind of a dumbass. But here we are anyways. We're going to have a good time. And now that I've gotten the mispronunciation of your name under the, out of the way early, Melanie, welcome to Keeping It Rio. How's everything going with you today?
I am fantastic. How are you?
I'm pretty well also. It's been a great day. It's kind of nasty here with the weather in Texas, but I plan on bringing some heat here to our episode, and I think we're going to have a wonderful time. So I appreciate you taking the time to chat. Why don't we just dive right in? I always love to just jump in and see what's going on. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for having me. It's definitely my honor and nice to be here with you and your guests, or your listeners, your guests, you know what I mean. My story, it's like, I got to keep it short because I can get into story. Okay.
You don't have to keep it short. Trust me, I'm good. I am good. Let's get details.
We can get details, but I don't want to get like too deep into it because there's so much. But I'll give everybody like the cliff notes so they have like an idea of who I am and why the hell they should even listen to me, right? So, so long story short, I grew up without my father, and I had 6 stepdads by the time I was 21. And to say that I didn't trust men and I didn't even know who I was as a young girl would probably be an understatement. My dad is in my life now, so that's a really beautiful thing. But I grew up feeling very insecure, unsure of myself, unworthy, not important. I felt like collateral damage every time my mom went from like the next husband, and and I didn't know this like as I was in it, right? I don't think we really even know what the hell's going on. We just deal. And things started showing up in my relationships that really started to impact me as I became a young adult. So when I was about 21, I met who would be my first husband, and he was 31, and like 21, like I was a baby. I was like even though I had kind of a chaotic upbringing, I was still kind of sheltered and very naive. And so basically he turned out to be a psychotic stalker narcissist. Just fast forward.
It happens sometimes, I suppose. Yeah.
And I had 3 children with him. This is before I knew these things, but like, I want to give like the audience some clarity. I totally believe that we see red flags in our romantic relationships. We just lie to ourselves, or we try to paint them other colors, or give ourselves all these excuses as to, well, I'll change him, or it'll be different with me, or, like things like that. But when the red flags are going like this, don't do it. Like, you just need to listen. You need to listen, because what you're about to embark on is pain. Okay. So I had to learn some really, really hard lessons. And so I was married to him for 9 years and had 3 babies with him. And my kids were just like my world. And I married him knowing he wasn't, like, I really wasn't in love with him. I knew that. Like, I loved him, but like the world didn't, the sun didn't rise or set in him for me. And for me, it was more of, I just want stability in my life. I just want to know that I can count on somebody who's going to be there for me, and I can stay put in one place and like build a family, right? Well, he was anything but stable. So, ironic there, isn't it? And so fast forward some more. There's a lot that I could get into as to like paint pictures of just how toxic it was, but just, take my word for it, is very, very unhealthy. There was a lot of isolation, a lot of manipulation, a lot of nobody cares about you but me, I mean, he was basically like a mind fuck, and tried to like keep me from my family and my friends. Anybody who could have like my ear, he didn't want that because he wanted control, right? It was all about control. So probably 8-9 years into our marriage, he wakes me up in the middle of the night. And this is kind of like his MO. He'd like to like threaten and scare. And basically said we should get separated. And I said, are you crazy? Like, we have 3 kids, like marriage or divorce is not an option for me. And to me, if I got divorced, then that meant I was going to end up putting my children through the same kind of pain that I went through. And that was never, ever going to happen. So even though I knew we didn't have a good, healthy, loving relationship, it was like, I hate to say this, but I really want people to like see that they have other choices in life. It was like, I made this commitment, therefore I need to follow through for the rest of my life, right? Like, doesn't matter if it's good or bad. Like, you took your vows, you stay, you don't leave, you don't break up the family. And it was really hard for me to come to the realization of like, this doesn't work. This isn't healthy. And I don't actually want my daughter to think that this is how a man should treat her. And I don't want my 2 boys to think that this is how they should treat a woman. And I don't want this to be an example of like what a relationship looks like. Like, I was ready to break like the cycle that ran in my lineage. Like, this ends with me. And so when he threatened basically like that night, I said, well, no, like, we can't do that. Like, let's just get counseling. Right. And he's like, sorry, pardon my French, counseling's for pussies. What? And I said, this is the first time I started to get my voice back. So I used to be somebody who got in trouble in class because she talked too much. Okay. So
I can relate.
so while I was married to him, because I would basically get punished for speaking up or defending myself or speaking my truth, I would get the silent treatment for days. I just started to shut up and shut down because it wasn't worth it. It just wasn't worth it. So in that moment, I was starting to get my voice back. And I said, because it's going to be a little crude, but I'd like
Go
to
for it.
Okay. When he said, counseling's for pussies, I said, well, you might get more pussy if you actually went to counseling. And in that moment, it was like, oh, she's still in there. That feisty, like, strong woman is still in there. And of course, he was completely pissed off that I had the audacity to say such a thing, right? But the beautiful thing about that moment in time was that it woke me up. It literally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever you want to call it, right? It woke me up. And the next morning, when I physically woke up, I was like, what am I even fighting for here? I don't even like this man as a human, as a lover, as a father, as a husband. Like, he showed me so many parts of him during that marriage that he had like a dark soul. What am I even fighting for? And I had like this battle inside of like, but a good woman and a good mom, right? You would not do this. You came from a so-called broken home. I even hate that like term. Now you're going to do this to your children, right? And it's like, no. Like, the thing that gave me the strength was like what I had just shared to you like a couple minutes ago of, if I stay in this marriage and do what society says is the right thing, right? Because this makes me bad, wrong, you're divorced, you're collateral damage, whatever bullshit that, you know, we like to tell ourselves or people like to tell us because we get divorced. You could stay and do the right thing based on society and what everybody else tells you is right. And then your daughter might marry a man like this, and your sons might be husbands like this. And then they might be going through the same thing that you're going through, right? Or you can end this with you now. and you can show your boys healthy, and you can show your daughter healthy, and you can co-parent, right? And that's what I chose to do. And then that's when it got crazy.
Uh-oh.
So he ended up stalking me for a year. I had 4 personal protection orders against him. He was hiding in my bushes,
Wow.
sending me text messages saying, "Who are you talking to?" So fast forward some more. This was in Michigan. I had to get out of Michigan because I was either going to go insane or die, one or the other. Because he made it very, very clear and even said to me, "I'm not going to stop. I won't stop until you're in a gutter or you come back to me." Neither one's happening, dude. Neither one.
Wow.
Neither one. So I got a job in Arizona, and which is where I live now. And I went through a 3-day custody battle to get full custody of my kids in order to move, because there's no way I was going to move and not have them with me.
Right.
In the midst of all his crazy, he did something that I never, ever thought he would do. And he did some low things. He started to involve our kids, and he would say things like, "Your mom doesn't love you and she's a whore." Literally these words. And they were 3, 5, and 7. And that's just like a little snippet of the things that he said to them. And the only thing that kept me sane during that time, when we were going back and forth with custody before I moved to Arizona, because I would cry when they would come home to me, because I had to like deprogram them, basically. Like they would say terrible things to me, and they were like my babies. Like I was their whole world. They were with me 99% of the time. Like little ducks following the mama duck, like everywhere. Grocery shopping, bath, like he paid the bills. That was his involvement as a father. That was about it. So where was I? Oh, custody. Yeah. So basically after like 3 days of custody, or 3 days of like the custody hearing, the judge told him, "You made this too easy on me." And that just spoke volumes, because in the beginning of the trial, she made it really, really clear how she does not like to separate children from their parents. And so after 3 days, "You made this too easy on me," and gave me full custody. So we moved across the world, across the country. And then I reconnected with my high school sweetheart. This is like a couple years after I was divorced. And it's like, I always tell my clients, you'll keep dating the same person in a different body until you do the work. And that's exactly what happened to me. Now, he wasn't quite as, let's say, disturbed, but very, very similar. Like they both did construction. They were both Italian. I'm not knocking Italian people here, okay?
Or construction workers, right?
Yeah.
To be clear.
It's just weird, the similarities, right? Which is why I say that. And they both, were like jealous and possessive and controlling. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, but the second husband was sweeter and kinder, and I did actually feel loved by him. But it was just more drama and chaos. And that marriage lasted 5 years. And it was the realization, literally, I remember it like it was yesterday, because this is about 6 years ago. I'm standing in my kitchen, and I'm just sitting there like having like a come to Jesus moment with myself. And it's dawning on me that I'm going to get divorced again. And I initiated, even though, he dangled the carrot, which I know he didn't mean to, because it was just a form of manipulation. The first husband, I filed, and the second husband, I filed. But, we know the first one threatened. It was the realization of, oh my God, what is wrong with you that you are getting now another divorce? Like, you didn't just screw up once, and like you have screwed up twice. It's kind of like what I said to myself, right? But it was such a profound, beautiful moment of clarity in my life, because I realized that I was the common denominator. Sure, I can blame both of them. One's a narcissist, a jerk, an asshole, controlling, la 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 la, right? Like, and these all could be true, but like, I'm the one who picked them. I'm the one who chose them. I'm the one who married them. In that moment of just crystal clarity of like really owning who I am, who I've been, and what my choices have been, completely changed the rest of my life. Like I just did a total 180 in that moment. Like I was just determined to fix what I thought was broken.
Wow. So you've just given us a lot right here
I
to
know.
kind of talk about. I do, before we get too deep into, current times, I want to
Yeah.
go back just a little bit. You told me something at the very beginning that before you were 21, you had 6 different
Stepdad.
stepfathers.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how that dynamic is, because honestly, I don't know anybody that's able to tell me that they've had 6 different stepfathers. Along that way, how were you able as a young child? You even said, that it affected you because it was your reality. But when you were growing up,
Mhm.
how was that for you? When you would almost get used to one and then another one would show up. And were these relationships similar to what you found yourself experiencing later on in life?
Mhm. Yeah. Um, the thing that was so hard was that I was I was always just like a light of a little girl. Just like my nickname in the neighborhood was Sunshine. And so I always just had like a really positive, just bright light kind of spirit. And so I didn't look at my mom like, what is wrong with you as a little girl? Like, I didn't even think to even like, that didn't even like register. It was, oh, here's another like cool guy. Okay, cool. Right. And then like, I'd love him. And then he'd be gone. And it makes you like really confused, obviously. Right. And I don't have any childhood memories of my father. Like I've seen pictures, but I know that he left right around like 3 or 4, and then after him came a really cool guy named Norm, which I feel like he was even more nurturing than my mom. And luckily, I had pretty cool stepdads, but there was one in particular who was with me from say 12 to 18 who was awful. He was awful. He was emotionally abusive. And so re-ask me that question because I kind of forgot it.
Well, no, it was,
Yeah.
how did that affect you growing up? Did it affect you? And the thing that's beautiful about what you just said is that it really didn't negatively affect you, that it was that, because it was life and you didn't probably realize this is not completely typical. Most kids don't have 6 stepfathers, but the fact that you said also that you would get to love them, that was going to be my next question was, did you develop any attachment to any of these folks along the way?
Yeah.
And when they would leave, did you have feelings of abandonment from some of them as well, as you were probably looking very desperately at a young age for some type of, affectionate male person in your life that could, kind of help you along the way? So, how do you think that molded you as you continue to evolve as a person?
Yeah, so now that I'm on like the other side of it, right? I can really like look back and reflect. And I know it gave me very deep abandonment wounds. I had very deep unworthiness wounds, and nobody ever told me I was unworthy, but because everybody kept leaving me, right? Even though like it's not logical. See, these things, they become unconscious and subconscious. So it's not a logical, oh yes, this person left me, but you don't know any better when you're little. And you're not fully developed in the capacity to even understand the dynamics of this relationship, right? And
Yeah, it's
so
all emotion.
yeah. And so what I felt as a young woman and a young girl, and then being able to start to see that the older I got and got into romantic relationships, was I had deep abandonment wounds. I had unworthiness wounds. I had this common, how could you say, it's not common, but like this consistent chronic voice of like, you're just not important. You're not good enough. You're not important enough to be made a priority. And then what's ironic and interesting, because, as within, so without, the outer world is a reflection of the inner world. Both of my husbands, I wasn't a priority to them either. And it drove me crazy because that's all I ever wanted. Like, can't I be fucking number one in somebody's life? Like, why am I not important? Right. And when my children came into my life, like that's the first time truly that I can say that I felt loved and I loved truly, like unconditional, like the deepest form of love in that moment in time when with each one who was born. And so, yeah, like doing the work and healing my inner child and healing the abandonment wounds and the not good enough and the unworthiness and you're not important and all of these things, I realized the reason that I attracted, those toxic relationships was because I had a shitty relationship with myself. I didn't value myself. And you don't really realize that when you're little and then when you're in relationships. Because to me, I gave everything to those relationships, even though I knew, like deep down, these are not the loves of my life. Like I knew that, but because I committed, I was all in. Like I was the best wife that I could be. I mean, the problem was I turned into like a people pleaser. I had no boundaries.
You were
Like
too good. Yeah, I
I was
get you.
too good. And I became this chameleon in all of my relationships. Whatever they needed me to be is who I became so that they wouldn't leave me. Because my fear was if I'm not whatever it is you think I need to be, then you'll leave. And so it was very interesting to be in my mid 40s and wondering who the fuck I am. Because that's like the place I came to after the second divorce. It was like, I don't even know who I am. I don't know what I like outside of my roles, right? As a woman, as a mother, as a, in this career, blah, blah, blah. But who am I as a soul, as somebody here to give to the world? Who am I? And that was like the search that started everything for me, was discovering who the hell I am. And then once I discovered her, having the courage to actually be her.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, what a powerful statement that is that you just made there. And I understand exactly what you're talking about because I grew up in a not, you look at things after the fact, like you said, you don't realize in the moment that things are a little bit off.
Yeah.
But the same deal. My mom told me on her deathbed that, if she would have thought it through, she probably wouldn't have stayed married as long as she did to my father. My dad was not a terrible human being by any means, but now that I look back, there was a lot of emotional abuse. There was a lot of things like that. Whether it was intentional, I don't know. It probably was to a degree, but the question I want to ask you before we get, too much further along is when you got married the first time, there was a pronounced age difference there as well. And at 21, you hit the nail on the head. You're just starting your life. You're just kind of figuring out who you are. You've had a childhood that's not been typical, but it's been good. And you've never, felt like anything real bad. But do you think that you were still at that young age looking for that father figure? And do you think that that is what led to that attraction to the 31-year-old to ultimately get married and then, try to start your life that way? Were you looking for something that was missing from your life, do you think, from an earlier phase?
I don't think that I purposely sought out a father figure per se. I don't remember thinking that, like, I need an older man. I think so when we got married, I was 20, 26, 26, he was 36. So we were together for 5 years. What he represented for me, what I thought was somebody that I could count on. He represented stability, security, supposedly had his shit together, was in his career, out of the 20s, when guys, well, all of us really, what am I saying? All of us do dumb shit in our 20s.
We have fun. Yeah. It's when you learn what not to do when you get older.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, maybe unconsciously. Yeah, but that was never like an actual thought.
That's very fascinating to me. And I always wonder things like that because, there was a gap there that needed to be filled. And at such a young age, you committed yourself. So you spent basically your 20s into your 30s in this toxic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You get out of it. And now it's like, oh crap, I gotta change my life completely. You move from Michigan, which I'm from Ohio, so I can respect moving out of Michigan.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. And you move halfway across the country. You've got your children with you. You are basically now starting over completely from scratch in an entirely new environment with people that you probably don't even know.
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about that experience, for your children. Obviously they understand, mom's doing what's best.
Mm-hmm.
But as a kid, it's also tough to understand why we're relocating halfway across the country. We're not going to see our dad like we had been, or maybe they hadn't been at this point. I don't know. But, how was the adjustment for your kids? How have you handled that? And honestly, how was it for you as someone who basically now you're still the same 21-year-old girl that had gone through all this stuff, but now you've got, a little bit more experience in life, but still not any real, out on my own, supporting, being the head of the household type stuff. How does that work for you from that stage to transitioning into your new life?
Well, there's a lot of questions. Give me one right now.
There's a lot. Yeah. So, okay. So you're moving you're moving across the country.
Yes.
Your children are now going to be in a different environment. They're going to make new friends. They're going to be around new people. But one of the key people in their life is no longer going to be prominent.
Yeah.
How did your children adjust to that?
They did quite well. And the reason is before the divorce, even though we lived in the same house, like I said, 99% of everything was me. So outside playing, making dinner, going to doctor visits, going on play dates, going to school, bath time, bedtime, me. So like I was their main everything. So it wasn't really hard for them because we're with mommy all the time, right? Like, so, and they were young. They were 3, 5, and 7. And that's another reason that I knew I had to make the decision like then rather than later. Cause again, like in my mind, I'm like, okay, if I wait, it's going to be so much harder on them. It's going to be so much harder on the family. Like right now, they're so young and so little that I felt this, if I do it now, this is going to create the least amount of possible damage. And I didn't move out of the state and, figuratively take them away from their father in a, how do I say this? I didn't take that lightly. I grew up without my father. I grew, all my fathers left, right? So I didn't want to do that to my children, but at the same time, because he was so toxic, I hate to say this, but it's true. Like my children would have been better off without any father than that kind of father. He was poison to them, and he was ruining them to try to get to me. That was the whole point. So we looked at it like an adventure. That's how I we're like
Yeah.
gonna go over here. It's gonna be nice and warm. We're gonna have fun. We're still gonna be together. Like everything was pretty much the same as me and them, because that's how it that's how it was the majority of the time anyway. And then they would see him on breaks. Like that was like the deal, like the arrangement. Um, yeah, I'd lived in Michigan my whole life, and I always was like, I don't know, why do I live here? It's so cold. I hate this freaking weather. It's depressing. Like, it's like death most of the year, right? I'm just like, this is a great opportunity to get the hell out of here. And the economy in Michigan was sucking. He basically forged his W-2s so that he didn't have to pay me child support. So I'm now taking care of them financially too. And then, like I said, it was even hard to make money because at that time, that's when the whole mortgage industry, like the bottom just fell out for everybody. And I was writing loans before that, doing well. And then I went to like making next to nothing. And then not only I have to pay for 3 children like on my own, because like I had said, he's like, you're going to owe me money by the time I'm done. What? No,
Wow.
over my dead body. Like that's never going to happen. So again, like I hate to say, but like there's been people in my life my whole life, but I've always felt like I've been alone. I've always felt like a lone wolf. I got to soldier up. Like even with my mom, like I parented my mother, like I parented my parent. And even though she had all these husbands, right? Like I had to grow up very, very young. But by 11, I was like super independent and bossing her around. Of course, she didn't like that, but it's who I had to be to survive.
Yeah.
So
No, I can appreciate that.
yeah, I was used to basically, figuratively grabbing the bull by the horns and taking the reins. Like when I had to move across the country, I was like, let's go. Like, this is what we got to do.
I like that. And to be honest, I think you made the perfect decision for yourself, for your kids. There's no doubt in my mind that that was your priority.
Yeah.
And I think that it's very powerful what you said, that they may have been better off without a father than with that type. Because I think about stuff like that a lot from my personal life. And it's like, wow, there's a lot of stuff that's there to unpack. And when you sit down and think about it, it's like, damn, that was pretty messed up. But you got yourself out of that situation. You got your children, into a new place. You've started your new life. You rekindle now your relationship with your high school sweetheart, and you guys end up getting married.
Yeah.
How was this transition for your kids? Did they accept that? Were they good? Were there any kind of difficulties with, adapting into a new family type scenario?
Yeah, the whole blending thing is definitely a challenge. He was really good to my kids, and initially, and that was a non-negotiable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if I see any inkling that you're going to be shitty to my kids, you're out, right? So he was very good to them. He was very sweet. He was fun. He was kind. He just kind of took them on as they were his. And he had 3 daughters, and I had a couple boys and a daughter. And he was like, "Oh, cool! Like I get to play football with somebody finally, right? Some testosterone in the house, for God's sakes, finally, right?" So, so initially it was great, and it was fun, and it was beautiful, and it was easy. And then it started to just go. And I don't know when it started to fall apart, but what happened was how do I say this? His daughters created a whole lot of chaos and drama. I was like the enemy from the beginning. Like they hated me from the beginning. I felt it. I knew it. The red flags were all there. Again, people pay attention to the red flags. But then I convinced myself, oh no, it's just, they'll like me eventually. It's just a new thing, right? I'm just like convincing myself. But no, they hated me, and I was the enemy, and I was like competition. That's what I felt like. I'm like, we're in competition. I'm like, I'm the mom and the woman of the house. There's no competition here. You guys are the children, right?
Yep.
So, but the problem was I treated my children like they were my children. And he treated his children like they were his girlfriends, minus the weirdness. But it was this very weird, enmeshed, codependent, just weird. It's just weird. It was like they were on this pedestal that was equal to me as his wife. And they knew it. And they would take advantage of it. And they wouldn't get disciplined. They'd be given everything they want. And then my children would be disciplined. I'm like, fuck no. This is not how this goes. All these kids are being treated equal across the board. And that became like this point of contention because I'm parenting all the children like they're the same, right? I love all of you. And he's not. And his are the ones who are getting favored. And then now my kids are coming to me like, Mom, and they're pointing things out to me, right? And I'm like, and their feelings are getting hurt, right? I'm like, oh, hell no, this is not okay. Like, I moved my kids across the country to save them from this grief, agony, and drama. I'm not going to have you do this to them. I wouldn't even let their own father do this to them. You're not going to do this to them, right? I can very much get into mother bear mode, easy. So
well, good for you. I respect that tremendously. That's awesome.
So it just became so tumultuous, and he refused to parent his daughters, and he didn't, the men might not like this, but I'm going to say this because it's really important. He wasn't the man. He wasn't what a father and a man should represent in a family. He wasn't at all. And the thing about women, about me, and a lot of women, when we've had to grow up being very independent and grab the reins, right? We'll do it. We will do it. We will do it unconsciously because it's who we are. If you don't step up and be the man in the relationship, then we will put on the masculine shield and we'll step up and we'll be the man. And of course, that's going to create like this power struggle, right? And it wasn't something I did out of spite or emasculation. It was who I've always been.
It was your natural reaction to the situation. Absolutely.
Yeah, to survive, right? So in my upbringing, I had to kind of armor up and create like a masculine shield or a masculine frame because I didn't trust the masculine. Well, why? Because there was a revolving door of them in my life. So of course I couldn't trust it, right? So my energy field, if you will, is like, okay, I'll be the dude in this relationship. And it got so bad that at one point he told me that I need to put my dick away.
Well, I guess that's right to the point. But if someone has to tell you that, then maybe, instead of putting yours away, maybe you should bring yours back out, no offense.
And
I don't know your ex-husband, but.
No, and that's Chuck. That's exactly what I said to him too, because it was getting like towards the end of our relationship and I was getting really tired of being talked to like that. And I said, well, I wouldn't have to pull mine out if you'd use yours. And he used to go around saying, I'm the man, I'm the man, I'm the man. And I would say, a real man doesn't have to say he's the man. He just is.
Very true.
And so there was a lot of this, right? And I was in that space. I know that I was trying to hold the frame to allow him to step into the leader of the family, because I do believe a man in his true masculine essence, that is who he is, right? But he wouldn't. And so, well, I can't drop the reins because you're not, then I will, right? And so that's what like created this. And I kept like asking him to do it in essence. It was most importantly with his daughters. I'm like, you're their father. You need to be their father. You need to be the strong, masculine influence and not a pushover and let them wrap around your little finger and I'm sorry, but you're like a bitch. What are you doing? Right? And I didn't say these things to him, but that's like how I felt. And I'm like, you're not helping these girls by being this man. You're not showing them what a strong man who loves them as their daughters, who has no problem holding boundaries and putting them in their place when they're being a jerk to your wife, or they're acting inappropriate, or whatever the case. Like there was a lot of drama. And I kept being forced to be in the role to parent them. And I'm like, I don't want to parent them. They're not my daughters and they hate my guts. Well, stop putting me in this role. It's not fair. But then I would do it for the greater good of all of us, right? Like I'm not going to step down. Like that was my responsibility too, as their stepmom. Okay. I am the parent. I will be one of the parents here. I will be the stepmom, right? So yeah, we just fought so much. And then like after 5 years, that's when I had like that realization of like, holy shit, you're getting divorced again? Like, oh my God, like what is wrong with you? Right. And that's when I realized like, what is wrong with you that you keep attracting these toxic men and choosing them? Like something in here needs to shift. Something in here needs to change.
That's amazing. And it's beautiful that you've discovered that about yourself and that you're willing to accept that, because most people are in denial. And you were spot on when you said it's easy to blame the other party, but there's got to be a role that it continuously is happening. At some point you realize I got to get out. I got to stop this. So you have that moment.
Yeah.
You get out of your second marriage and now you're starting over again. Right.
Yeah.
So is this the phase that you're in now in life? Now we're kind of in like the third chapter. You've still got your family. You're still there. Tell me a little bit about how you overcome what you've put yourself through for the last, couple decades almost at this point. and you've gone through some serious shit. Let's just be honest. You've experienced a lot of heartache and pain. I think there's probably a lot more to it than what you've just said here in our 40 minutes, but you go through these experiences in life, they create who you are, and then you finally have enough and it's like game over. So tell me, when you break free from this and now you're out again, having to rebuild the entire thing, what does this third verse look like for Melanie and her life and her family? And, how have you overcome all this stuff to be the happy and bubbly person that I'm talking to today on Keeping It Real?
So I just started working on me like it was my job 6 years ago. Like I was obsessed with fixing me. I truly felt broken. Now, I know now I was never broken. None of us are broken, but I felt broken. Sure, shit, I felt broken. And so you name it, I did it, I tried it. And within that space of getting to know myself, healing myself, understanding why I chose men like that, right? Developing a more beautiful relationship with myself and truly falling in love with myself for the first time, and not in a narcissistic way, even though we all have a little narcissism in us. Let's just be real. But it was so beautiful in that space of me, what I like to call unlearning and unbecoming. You're just shedding off all this crap that you are not, right? As I used to think, I was my past, I was my upbringing, I was my gender, I was my religion, I was my culture, I was what society told me I was, right? Like we get put in all these little boxes, right? Got all these little freaking boxes that we just get trapped in. And it was like, fuck this shit. Like I'm exploding all these boxes. And and I'm going to discover who the fuck I am, right? With none of these boxes, none of them. I'm going to discover what feels true and real to me, like at my soul level, in my heart. And in that beautiful exploration, if you will, is coaching found me, which blew my mind because I never chose to be a coach. It wasn't something, it wasn't that I didn't want to, it just was never a thought. And when I started to get on the other side of like all that pain, and I started to feel and just pure survival, like my whole life just felt like I was just surviving. So I got in this space of like inner peace, true self love, acceptance, understanding, forgiveness of my mother, my father, the stepdads, the exes, myself, which was huge. Attracting a very different caliber of men into my life. I went from like trolls to kings. It just, again, just coming to this place of like, even this might even sound cheesy, but like, even like when I would look outside, it's like everything looked even more brighter and more alive. And I felt like I was awake for the first time. I felt like I was in some kind of like funk sleep hell for all those years. And I was like, huh, I'm awake and it's not that shitty anymore, right? And as I felt this really this overpowering awareness came over me of I have to teach this. Like I've walked this path. Like that shitstorm of a past was not in vain. You didn't go through all of that crap and have to be a fucking warrior for nothing. Like you went through that like a phoenix, right? Rise from the ashes. You went through that so you can show others the way. So you can show others that it doesn't have to be like this. And that's when I knew, I was like, holy shit. Like this is why I never found a career that I loved. And I had some great careers. I've probably had 8 in my lifetime. And every time I got into one, I was like, I'm bored. And everybody around me be like, what is wrong with you? Like you just like killed yourself to get that career, like medical sales, architecture. I was a designer at Ford, and I'm like, I'm done. And it was because I was meant to do this. And I've always loved helping people. And so when I actually walked the path and understood, oh, this is why I did the things I did. This is why I was a people pleaser. This is why I sabotaged good relationships. This is why I chose shitty men who were shitty to me, right? This is why, this is why, this is why, this is why. Huh. Yeah, this is what I'm supposed to do. Like this is my purpose, is to walk others down the same path so they can realize there's a better way. There's a more beautiful way.
Yeah, what an amazing purpose. And I love the fact that you basically you're doing all these things that are successful in the eyes of humanity, but you don't love it. So you didn't stick yourself in a career. You were unfulfilled and still thought there's something that I need to find. So you found your spot. Yeah. Obviously your life has prepared you for this. Let's talk a little bit about your coaching now. So this is a major thing that you're doing, because you're going to be helping a ton of people who have lived through the same things that you have. You've experienced them firsthand. So you know this is very serious. So how do people that need your help, how do they go about finding you? How do they go about asking you for help? And I don't know how to ask this one, but like the majority of the I'm guessing you're probably mostly helping women. I don't assume you're probably getting a lot of dudes that are reaching out to you for help.
No, I am. I'm
really
helping equal men and women pretty much. Yeah.
Well, that's badass. Okay. Because most guys don't ask for help. So I think that's a beautiful thing too. And I think it shows that these issues can exist on both sides. Yes. And I think that sometimes people just don't know how to properly navigate through that. But let's say that you've got someone that's in a very similar situation to what you found yourself in life. They're watching this right now and they're like, oh my gosh, like Melanie's story is my story. And she's inspired me. I'm stuck in an abusive relationship. I want out, but I'm staying for the kids. Or I don't want society to look at me like I'm not a good person because my marriage fell apart. How do you find these folks? You know, they're broken. And what do you do to go about rebuilding that confidence, getting them to where they feel good about themselves? And then ultimately being able to enjoy the rest of their lives after going through such trauma.
Yeah. Like, are you asking me like, what's the process? Like
Yeah. Like, how do you go about helping people? What does that look like for you? Obviously, you've got firsthand, you're not reading it out of a book, you've experienced it. So I think that level of expertise is probably, better than most people ever really are able to find. So
yeah, you can't learn this in a book. You can't.
unfortunately, yeah, it's one of those things that you have to learn in reality. And you've got the curriculum, you understand how to go about making your life better. So you find people, how does it look for that? What do you do as far as helping people get out of what's probably the worst rut in their entire life?
Yeah. So at minimum, we work together 3 months because I need a certain amount of time with them to actually start to gain some momentum to create change. Because you think about, they've been this person, they've thought this way, they've felt this way, they've had a certain amount of trauma within their body, in their nervous system. It's not just going to get out like that, right? So I work with people 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. I have clients that have been with me for years, 2 years, 3 years. And I tell every single client, listen, I don't want you to need me by the time we're done. Like that is my goal with every person that comes to me. I don't want this to be, therapy has its place. Okay. I'm not going to talk bad about it. I want to get you to a place where we've gotten into the root causes and we've excavated those motherfuckers, right? And so, and so always every client that I choose them and they choose me. We choose each other. The first phase is always an unlearning phase because there's so much that we believe that we've taken on from society, from our parents, from TV, from our environment. It doesn't matter, right? But it's been embedded in our subconscious and our unconscious, these beliefs, right? Like I believed I was unworthy. I could never have attracted a man who treated me well and actually stayed with him when I felt that way. Why? Because I remember actually early on, like attracting a really good man who was totally into me, and my nervous system couldn't handle it because I believed he would find out that I wasn't good enough and he would dump me. So I get in and I help the people first unlearn. That's the most important thing. Unlearn all the lies so that now we can relearn the truth, right? And part of that is holding a really safe space for them. And it's a mind and body approach because you can't just get into, how people like think about like affirmations and, you just got to repeat this affirmation and write out this affirmation 100 times. No, the shit doesn't matter if there's still trauma living in your body. If your inner child, little girl or little boy is hijacking your sex life or your dating life or your relationship life, no amount of affirmations is ever going to have an impact on that. So we get in, and a lot of times my clients have had past childhood trauma because they're similar to me. Your vibe attracts your tribe, right?
Yep.
So we get in and we do a lot of inner child work, and I help them reparent themselves. There's a lot of work around self-love. I do breath work. I do meditation, sounding, movement. It's a lot of integration between the mind and the body, So they both are like, you can't just address one or the other. So when you address both simultaneously, now you're encoding and recoding your nervous system, right? Because when a relationship with a good man or a good woman feels like a threat to your nervous system because you don't know this, you've never experienced it, you will, if you just think of like from an energetic perspective, you will send out a signal that is what you want. You don't want a good man or a good woman because it feels too much on your nervous system. What it can feel like in your body is anxiety, panic, fear, stress. Oh, he's going to leave me. No way, right? That in that activation is very, very real, and it doesn't matter if it's true or not. Whatever you're feeling in your body, in your nervous system, is going to register as true, and it's going to cause fight, flight, fawn, freeze, any of these things, right? So part of this process of digging out the root cause of the relationship challenges is unlearning, relearning, getting into the subconscious, the unconscious, where are the fears coming from, where's the trauma, inner child work. There's a lot to it, but basically on the other side of this is more self-love, more acceptance, more forgiveness, more confidence, clarity, compassion, and not just for yourself, but now for others, right? Like, I had so much resentment towards my mom for such a long time. I blamed her for all of my shitty relationships. Like, the truth is, she could only do what she knew to do with what she had, right? So you start to just be like, just this sigh, like your nervous system starts to just relax, and you don't feel like you're being attacked, or like you don't feel so activated in your nervous system. And I think that is something a lot of us are afraid to feel, so we'll numb out with alcohol, drugs, porn, workaholics, like, so it's like, oh, so I don't have to feel, right? But part of the work that we do together, where the real healing is to feel these things. And it's a cheesy saying, but it's so true. To heal it, you do have to feel it.
Yeah,
and then
absolute.
Now you're opening up so much more space in your nervous system to feel now, like, everything, right? Like, if you want to feel like the highest of high of, like, pleasure, orgasm, bliss, happy, whatever you want to call it, right? You have to be willing to go to the depths of grief, of anger, of sadness. Like, you don't get to have the highest of the highs if you can't dip down into the lows. And I think a lot of people don't understand that and have a hard time with it. And so they stay in this space right here of, like, meh.
Right? Yeah. You're spot on, though. That is so astute. And I mean, I'm sitting over here just thinking about this, and it's like, wow, you've really, you understand a lot of things that most people never really are willing to accept or understand in themselves. And one question I always like to ask, and I told you that I was going to try to keep this like an hour. So if it's cool that we go over a few minutes, we're at 58 minutes right now, and I don't think we can finish with what I'm about to ask in 2 minutes. So I always love to ask my guests, and I've had people from all over the world that have done all kinds of different things. And the question I always love, because it always gets the best reaction, is tell me about one person specifically that stands out for you, that maybe reached out to you at some point when they were in desperate state and they needed you so bad to help them get out of a bad situation. Mm-hmm. And you've helped them. And then they come back later and say, Melanie, like, I may not be alive right now if it weren't for you. And I know that that's extreme, but I think it's probably very true in a lot of cases. You even said it yourself. You were either going to lose your mind or you were going to get, no longer be here. So tell me about one of the people, and don't mention names or anything, obviously, but there's always a story, especially when you're doing stuff like what you're doing, which is extremely emotional, and, it requires a lot of self, talk and reflection and all that. But tell me about your top one that really just made you realize, you know what, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm literally changing lives.
Yeah. Okay. So I won't mention names, but this person came to me after, a couple shitty, toxic relationships. And the final straw was with a fiance that she she was misdiagnosed, but at the time she didn't know it, with an illness that would definitely impact her life. And he wasn't there. He wasn't there for her emotionally. And she was like, I'm it. That's it. I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore. And I had at the time a free 5-day workshop in a private Facebook group. And she saw the ad for it, and it was called Bad at Love. And she's like, yeah, clearly
Calling
I'm
my name. Yeah.
clearly I'm bad at love. Okay, let's keep it real here. So so she joined, and she said she knew within like the first day that she was going to work with me, and that I was her person. And she's like, I saw you in me, and your story resonated to your point of like what you were saying earlier, right? And that's usually why most people choose to work with me. They're like, if you can do it, I can do it. I see you, who you used to be, in me. And she had told me something that blew my mind. And I take what I do so seriously. And it truly is a sacred gift. This is how I look at it. I've been bestowed upon me something that is important, and I don't take it lightly. So when she said that I got more from you in that 5-day workshop than 30 years of therapy, I was like, holy shit. Like, and she hadn't even worked with me yet, right? Like, that was like my free workshop. We hadn't even worked together one-on-one. So when we did start to work together privately, she created such a beautiful life. And she had given up on men. She had become like a man hater. And she wouldn't actually like tell anybody that, but she told me that, right? And she's like, there's no good men. There's nothing. Like, it's never going to happen for me. And in our time together, she met her soulmate. And it was so beautiful. And she had told me, she even wrote me a poem, which was so pretty. And she told me I saved her life, to your point. She said, I could never have gotten here without you. I don't even recognize who I am anymore.
That is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, because that right there, I mean, the emotion that you just showed, I don't know if you could even feel it from yourself, but I'm watching you tell the story and I could see how much it means to you. So God bless you, because you've done something special. You're helping people probably that you don't even realize you're helping. And I think that you'll probably find out somewhere down the road that there are probably so many more people that you've impacted just by being you, and people that are following on the outside that maybe don't have the courage to reach out to you. But one day they find that courage and they say, hey, you know what? You were the reason why I found that courage. So what an amazing story. I'll tell you what, I am so thankful for you taking the time to be on Keepin' It Rio. We literally met like 5 seconds before we hit record. So neither one of us knew what to expect from the other. This has been an amazing hour, and I really, really, really thank you so sincerely for taking the time to do it. Before we close out the show, I always love to just give the opportunity at the end. And I do have to can I do one thing real quick, Melanie? I got to break up the monotony just a tad bit.
Yeah.
I was into our conversation so much. I got to give thanks to my sponsor, which is roofer.com. That's ROOFR. And let me ask you, Melanie, have you ever run a roofing company?
No.
Well, let me show you real quick with this 20-second ad how easy it would be for you to start Melanie's Roofing right now, because I've got the ultimate solution. So you ready?
I'm ready.
20 seconds. Here we go. Let's do it.
We're Roofer. We know that managing a roofing business can be chaotic, so we created a single platform with all the tools you need to easily run your roofing business. Stop switching between multiple different softwares and experience streamlined operations from lead to payments in hours instead of days. Visit roofr.com to get started for free today.
There you go. So that was thank you to my sponsors, Roofer. I love them. Their coffee tastes even better in their cups. Before we sign off, I always love to just ask anybody that's watching this, that's inspired by your story, that's inspired just by your personality, because you've got a great one and I've really enjoyed this. What's the best way for people to follow you, to, you know, join along with your journey? If someone sees this and says, hey, I think she's the one that can get me to where I need to be, how do they go about doing it? What are the best ways to get a hold of you and to work with you?
Yeah. So they can find me on Facebook or Instagram. So just Melanie Verstraete. The name of my company is the Wild Heart Life, just like wild heart in the chest. So they can look that up too. There's different ways that you can work with me on there. You can send me a DM or private message, an email, like those three, you'll find a way to get in touch with me.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to get a hold of Melanie, I got a hold of Melanie through Facebook. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. So there it is. I appreciate your time so sincerely. This episode will change somebody's life, I promise. And thank you just for taking the time to be here. It's been such a joy. And as I always say, you know, you talk about a cheesy line, but I'm going to give you the cheesiest of them all, which is my tagline. I end every episode with this same stupid little thing, and I don't even know where it came from, but I always say this to end the show. Ladies and gentlemen, keep on keeping it real.